In World War II's Eastern Front, something more mysterious than the battles themselves was going on. Adolf Hitler, who relied on air travel a lot, was at the center of it all. Hitler's use of air travel was important to his war plans, but it also made him easier to attack. To facilitate this aerial mobility, Hitler had at his disposal a special squadron of transport aircraft, meticulously selected and modified to ensure his safety, comfort, and the efficient conduct of war efforts from the air. Central to this fleet was the Focke-Wulf 200 Condor, a plane originally designed as a maritime patrol aircraft, bomber, and civilian airliner. However, for Hitler, it was no ordinary Condor. Specifically converted for his use, this aircraft was armored to withstand attacks from flak and enemy fighters, making it a flying fortress that reflected the desperation and ingenuity of Nazi Germany's wartime logistics. Hitler's personal Condor offered luxury amid wartime harshness, with polished wood and plush carpeting and comfortable seating. It had a dedicated service for his needs and an armchair with a parachute, hinting at dangers that he faced. Two other Condors accompanied his, one for staff and guest, and the other for baggage and security. In the air, fighters escorted the Condors, indicating the resources dedicated to Hitler's safety. Hitler's aerial entourage, led by Hans Bauer, reflected his command in isolation. During World War II, Hitler's frequent flights demonstrated his determination to oversee the war directly despite the dangers. His use of the Focke-Wulf 200 Condor highlighted the balance between power and vulnerability. Once, Hitler faced a severe threat during a flight on the Eastern Front due to the proximity of Soviet forces to Zaporizhzhia. During his stay, Hitler and his entourage, including high-ranking officers and bodyguards, were engaged in a series of briefings and meetings aimed at reinforcing the faltering German defenses. Meanwhile, 3 Condors sat on the airfield, a silent testament to the audacity of Hitler's visit to such a vulnerable location. In February the 19th, the situation in the war got a lot worse. Soviet tanks broke through the defenses and started moving towards a German airfield. The base commander ordered his fighter planes to try and stop the tanks, but it was difficult because of the bad weather. Hitler was told about the situation, but didn't want to move his planes from the airfield. He was determined to stay in control and not give up, but the Soviet tanks were getting closer, and the German defenses were not strong enough to stop them. Just as the Soviet tanks were about to reach the airfield, Hitler's convoy arrived. Hitler and his group got in their planes and flew away just in time. They avoided a direct attack, but it was a very close call. In March of 1943, just a month after Hitler's narrow escape from the advancing Soviet forces, another significant event threatened his life. Showcasing the persistent dangers he faced, not just from the enemy on the battlefield, but also from conspiracies within, this episode unfolded during Hitler's visit to the front lines, highlighting the continuous risk surrounding the Führer, irrespective of the location. After his close call at the airfield, Hitler's reliance on air travel for wartime oversight did not wane. It was during a stopover in Smolensk, as part of his routine visits to monitor the Eastern Front status, that an assassination attempt was made against him. A bomb ingeniously disguised as 2 bottles of Cointreau was smuggled aboard Hitler's Condor. The device was equipped with a British time pencil fuse intended to detonate 30 minutes into the flight back to Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair. However, fate intervened in Hitler's favor once again. The freezing conditions in the aircraft's unheated cargo prevented the detonator's firing pin from releasing, rendering the bomb ineffective. This failed assassination attempt remained unknown to Hitler, as the bomb was later recovered by officers who had planted it, leaving no trace of their daring plot. The incident underscored the multifaceted threats Hitler faced during the war. It wasn't just the external military pressures of the Allies and the Soviet Union, but also the internal dissent within the ranks of the German military. The attempt on Hitler's life by smuggling a bomb onto his plane reflects the desperation and boldness of those who sought to end his tyrannical rule from within. Despite the multitude of risks, Hitler's uncanny luck and the stringent security measures surrounding him allowed him to evade death once more. These continuous escapes from assassination attempts and enemy captures contributed to the myth of Hitler's invincibility among his followers. However, they also highlight the precarious nature of his leadership during the latter stages of World War II. As the war progressed, the increasing frequency of such incidents painted a picture of a leader under siege, both from external and internal forces, constantly moving and relying on luck and security measures to survive. As World War II drew closer to its end, the situation for Nazi Germany became increasingly dire. The failed assassination attempt in March of 1943 was but one of many challenges faced by Adolf Hitler. Despite his numerous escapes from both the attempts on his life and the advancing Allied and Soviet forces, Hitler's luck was running out. The war's tide had turned decisively against Germany, and by 1945, the Red Army was closing in on Berlin, the heart of the Nazi regime. In April of 1945, the scenario that Hitler had narrowly avoided several times before finally unfolded. The Red Army reached Berlin. This time, there was no escape route, no aircraft ready to whisk him away to safely. The Soviet forces were within 500 meters of the Führer's bunker, a subterranean refuge between the Reich Chancellery garden. It was here in this bunker that Hitler spent his final days, isolated and with the remnants of his once formidable empire crumbling around him. The contrast between the earlier years of war, with Hitler confidently flying across occupied Europe to oversee his military campaigns, and his last days besieged in Berlin, could not be starker. The leader who had once narrowly escaped capture or death at the hands of the Soviets now found himself trapped with no options left. On April the 30th of 1945, as Soviet troops battled their way through Berlin, Hitler took his own life, alongside Eva Braun, whom he had just married over 36 hours earlier. This act marked the definitive end of Nazi Germany's tyrannical leadership. Hitler's death was a symbolic moment, signaling the imminent collapse of the Third Reich, which would formally surrender to the Allies a week later. Hitler's final days and his suicide in the bunker are a somber conclusion to the story of a leader who, for a second time, seemed to dodge fate through his travels and escapes. The narrative of Hitler's movements during the war, from his aerial journeys to his ultimate entrapment in Berlin, reflects the arc of the Nazi regime itself, from its aggressive expansion and domination of Europe to its rapid decline and final collapse under the weight of the Allied advance. After the fall of Berlin and Hitler's suicide, the world began the long process of healing and rebuilding from the devastation wrought by World War II. The war had left deep scars across the globe, and the end of Hitler's regime marked a pivotal moment in history. The reflection on this period and Hitler's role provides crucial lessons on the dangers of tyranny, the importance of resistance, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppression. The legacy of Adolf Hitler is a testament to the catastrophic impact a single individual can have on the rest of the world. His leadership, driven by a vision of racial purity and territorial expansion, led to the deaths of millions, including 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. The war altered the geopolitical landscape, leading to the division of Europe during the Cold War, and left a lasting imprint on the collective memory of humanity. As we look back on this chapter of history, the story of Hitler's near captures and his final days serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of hate and the capacity for evil within human societies. And that's all for this video. Hit that subscribe button for more informative videos just like this one. And thanks for watching.